Hey everybody, it's Ken McElroy on the Ken McElroy podcast, and I am happy to have my good friend here, Nicole, who has a incredible company called the Ultra Healthy Human, and she is an entrepreneur. What's very, very cool, the reason why we wanted her on here, and if you haven't listened to the first podcast, she talks about the 5 things that everyone should be doing to be healthy. But on this particular one, I wanted to go into how, because she was very smart in high school, very smart in college, got all the degrees, and then went right into the medical field and was working her butt off super hard, a lot. No time for her relationship, no time for anything. And then she made that leap, started her own business, and now actually took that and is now leveraging into real estate. So as you guys know from the Rich Dad model, ESBI, the chart, you start as an employee, then you move to self-employed, and then you move over to the B side and the I side, which is, having your business, even if it's a small business, pay for your real estate investments. And that's what she's doing now. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so it's always great. And as some of you guys know, I've been going to Nicole for years to stay healthy. And I actually think that it's one of the most important things that you can do, especially as you start to make money. You should not sacrifice your health as you venture into trying to be financially free. So, Nicole, let's talk a little bit about kind of your mindset when you started, because I know you were super smart, and I go into your office and you've got all these certificates, and you make a joke, and here's another certificate I got, right? And so why don't you walk through that, because I think a lot of people get caught up in the school system. And then They get caught up into some kind of profession, whether it's a doctor or a CPA or a lawyer or whatever. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, this is not what I signed up for, right? And you made that leap. So let's start with where you began and how you changed your mindset over and then made the leap.
Sure. So way back when I was in school, I knew I was aspiring to, be in the medical world and influence people's health outcomes. And I realized early on that school was only preparing me to be an employee. They wanted me to get a job at a hospital or, a clinic, wherever, and just, treat people like a statistic. And I didn't think that was really it wasn't what I dreamed of, what I was working so hard to do. And so, I started out as an employee, and I was working at Mayo Clinic Hospital, and, just kind of feeling like I wasn't making a big impact in the health world. And that's what kind of motivated me to venture out and start my own practice. But I also had to find my own way and really search, high and low. And early on, I think something that really helped me was surrounding myself with people that were entrepreneurs or people that stepped outside the box. When I would hang out with my friends at the hospital, they, were just happy being an employee and getting their paycheck and not really impacting the world. But there was something driving me to do more than this. And I was lucky enough to find different programs that I ended up getting a board certification in anti-aging and regenerative medicine, and then I did a fellowship in complementary medicine. And these really helped me in the medical world to start thinking outside the box. And then I realized, well, I'm never going to be able to do this in the hospital because it's only red tape, and it's just, it's what I call sick care. And so that's when I decided to start my practice, Ultra Healthy Human, and start from square one. But going back to, surrounding myself with entrepreneurs and people that were thinking outside the box, I think that was, from an internal perspective, it was so helpful to kind of talk about my ideas with these people that said, like yourself, Ken. I mean, you said, go for it. I think that's a great idea. There was depth behind it. I think I talked to you about my business plans and you said go for it. And at a certain point, there's like the fear side of things, or my parents that are very, they're like employees, and make the safe move, but my gut was telling me to make this leap of faith,
very
and that's when I finally said, it was like, being the phoenix bird and just letting go and saying, I'm going to do this. And that was the very first step. This was probably a long explanation, the first step in that direction of starting my own business and moving from the E quadrant to the S quadrant, self-employed.
But let's go back real quick, because that's a lot. Thank you. I think most people are where that area you were talking about. There's a couple things that I think that you recognize, and one was that you were actually a statistic. Like by being educated and dropping yourself into this employee education system of taking care of people, which you like to do.
Yep.
You were actually a statistic, right?
Yeah.
You were honestly very average, just like anybody else across the country at that point.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And I thought it was a waste of my skills, but also, as I said, it wasn't what I thought medicine is.
And then you had, I'm sure, and I don't know the answer, but did you have lots of medical debt too?
Of course. Yeah. Schools love to give you a lot of debt along with that paper.
Well, because that's a big deal right now. Some of these, I know I have friends that are in the medical space, and they come out with $200,000, $300,000, even $400,000 worth of school loans, right?
Sure.
Just to get through. And it's really hard, I think. It's awesome that you went into that, but I think it's really hard to pay off that debt if you're barely making it, right? Because you start off at a low level and then you kind of move up. It might be 10 years before you're making anything significant.
Sure. Yeah. When you first graduate, you hear this amount of money that you're going to get paid, not even thinking about, as an employee, you're going to get taxed like crazy, and you just give away so much of your money. So, initially you're just happy to get any paycheck, but, then once they start taking out taxes, you see, oh boy, I'm not making that much. And then you have all of this debt, and, you're just, like you feel like you're drowning. And I used to save a lot of money. And so I was kind of prepared to pay for some of my school, and I paid a lot of it off up front as I was going through it, which interestingly, from some of the lessons that I've learned from you and from Robert, it might have actually been somewhat of a disservice to myself to try to get rid of that debt so early on, because what I've learned over time is sometimes we need to use our debt to actually help us, move forward.
Yeah, perhaps. I think what's interesting is there's hundreds of thousands of people that are in the same situation.
Yeah.
Where they go through school and they become specialized in whatever it is that they're going to do, and they come out of college and they start a job or employment somewhere, and then they have to move potentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they have the cost of living, whatever that might be. And then they're looking at their whole life and they're saying, I've got all this debt. I'm here and I'm just grinding it out. I'm working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And it's and I think it's really amazing that you decided that you didn't want to participate in that. And that's actually what this podcast is about, is, so, I know you said that you jumped into circles of other people that would be supportive.
Yes.
But one of the things you touched on, which is the same thing I had, was your parents and all your friends, your existing network.
Yes.
It kind of sucks you in and pulls you back.
Yes.
Right. And a lot of people don't estimate the power of that, because it does suck you in, and so why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because you basically, aren't you questioning yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
You let's, for example, let's say you and I, we have a chat, and then you go home and talk to your mom. It's the exact opposite, right?
Right.
So how did you manage that?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, along the way it was like I'm always hearing my parents' voice in the back of my head. And, I think finally I got to a point where it was just something inside of me that was more powerful than the lessons that my parents were teaching me, because I also saw their struggles. They had, a paid for house and their cars were paid for, but they weren't feeling financially secure. And then I was, reading your books and Robert Kiyosaki's books and looking at things from a completely different perspective. And I mean, you're both very successful. So there has to be something there that kind of was pulling me in that direction.
Yeah, what's interesting, because now knowing you for a long time, it wasn't money. Obviously you want to make money, but what I felt like what was always pulling you was the ultra healthy human concept of getting people healthy and not. You keep talking about how in a hospital you were just managing sick people.
Yeah.
And so you went from what I would call, managing sick people to completely preventative.
Yes.
And that's actually, it felt to me like that's what drove you. And then you kind of had faith about the money. You're like, you hoped the money would come, right?
Yeah. Sorry. And yes, thank you for bringing that up. Sometimes I forget how powerful my passion was and what was it that actually drove me. And yes, it was the fact that I wanted to create what I consider health for patients and give them what I feel is true preventative medicine and give them the tools to feel empowered and take care of themselves. And that was the ultimate driving factor. It was something deep within me. It was my being that pushed me in that direction.
Yeah. I think what a lot of people don't realize is that most entrepreneurs are not driven by money.
Right.
Most of them are driven by some kind of a passion, and that's actually hard to find. What
Right.
your passion is.
Yep.
For me, it was providing a vehicle that a small investor, I'm talking about non-Wall Street, could invest in and do really, really well and not have to participate in the Wall Street game.
Yes.
And for years, it was health, and being prevented as opposed to just putting Band-Aids on sick patients all day long, right?
Right. And I think when you actually listen to your spirit or this drive or something that's sometimes hard to explain, that's what's ultimately going to make you feel fulfilled. And it's like this positive cycle that, for me, it just started like happening. It out of almost nowhere. It was like, you could call it luck or magic or whatever, but it was me listening to my spirit. It wasn't me saying, I want to make money, so let me find something that's going to make me money, because that I don't think would have ended the same way.
Well, right. That was actually it. And so let's go to the next piece, because that's the scariest piece, right?
Yeah.
Is creating your name and creating a business and then finding patients. So walk us through that, and then getting your first space, as I remember going to your first office space, which was actually at a CPA's office, right?
Yeah.
So, right?
Yeah.
We walk down the hall. I'm like, I think Nicole's in here. It says certified public accountant. And I'm like, am I in the right place? But you did it. And, you did it well. You just figured it out and found a spot. And let's talk about that. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I was actually in one space before I was in the CPA's office, but I remember finding a space that, that was like step number one. I had to find a space. And, I created like a basic website, and I had a phone number, and I was like all excited, I'm becoming a business owner. And so then I find this space that, I at that point, it was kind of within my budget. And I put my desk in there, and I have my phone, and then I sit down at the, for the first day, and then I'm like, okay, now what?
Yeah. Where are all the people?
Oh yeah, no one was knocking down the door. And so then I had to start, really pushing myself. They didn't teach me any of this in school. They didn't teach you how to own a business, and so I thought, I need to be creative here, and I need to start thinking about marketing and, budgeting and all these different aspects. Now it's like, here I am, here it is in front of me. I've done all of this school. I went to, the best school. I have all these board certifications, but that doesn't roll the patients in.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They don't even know I exist.
Yeah. Right.
So, I was, I had to start looking at other aspects of business. And so, so I started working on this, and ultimately it came back to, I had this breaking point after sitting there for, 2 months of maybe, I was lucky and a couple of my friends like referred, a patient or, so I had a few patients, but I'm like, I hit this breaking point and, I said, gosh, maybe I should just be an employee. This is like really hard. And it was, I could feel it kind of crushing my spirit. Like I wasn't, because I still had my parents and my friends in the background saying, oh, you can go be an employee. You'll just get a nice paycheck and enjoy life. So I have them pulling on one side of me. And then I have, I took this leap of faith and I realized that fear was kind of consuming me at that point. When I hit this point to even question, is this worth it? Do I go become an employee again? And, this is listening to your being or your spirit is what, that's been my entire journey, and keeping in check that you don't let fear consume you. Because I literally got to a point. I remember I was talking to my fiance. I wasn't talking to him. I was in tears. Like, what have I done? I've been sitting here for months and I should have just been an employee. And he said to me, Nicole, let go. Stop trying to control the outcomes and, do what you're doing and it will happen. And I did that. I let go. And it was so powerful because I remember almost overnight, all of a sudden the phone rang.
Wow.
And there comes a patient, and the patient came in, and that's when I did my magic, what I went to school to do. And they were impressed and they sent their friend to me.
Wow.
And so on and so forth. And that's how it happened. That's how I started building a clientele, doing what I love, being passionate about it, not trying to control all these other aspects that for me, it was control, but it was actually fear that was driving me. And that fear will drive you to failure. I had to keep putting myself in check and listening to my spirit. And so that's kind of the very beginning stages of my business. And so now I start getting a few patients, and I get, my business cards with my office address on it. And then all of a sudden I get a notice, a 30-day notice. Well, they're shutting down this whole building. So they tell everybody, get out. Oh, no. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just printed all this stuff. And, now no one's going to find me again. And that's how I ended up with the CPA, because he was in that office too. And so he was moving to a different office right up the street, and he saw how upset I was. And he said, well, I have an extra room in my office. Why don't you just rent from me for a while? And so that's what I did. I went over there, and, it wasn't a big, beautiful, high-rise building. It was just this little room that I had. And I had to tell myself again, you know what? I'm going to do what I'm good at. And, if the patients can see that and that's what they're looking for, they're going to come in. And so I stayed in this office, I think, for almost a year, tiny one room. And I finally got to a point where, or maybe you told me, you laughed at me enough times for the office I was in, that I thought, I'm always listening to, you talk about real estate and how this can be such a benefit to your business. I finally said, I'm going to start looking at real estate. But one other aspect of, as my practice was growing, and it's all been referral based, but I started picking up clients around the country. And so I travel a lot to go see patients. I have a pretty big clientele in New York City. So I go there almost every month to go see patients. And so one of the things or concept that I kind of thought of was, what if I actually build kind of a retreat type business where my patients come to me so I can leverage my time better and serve more patients. And so as I started looking at real estate, that's kind of the concept I was going for. And so, I start looking at places, and I find these places that I like, but now it's like I want to build this retreat, so I need, a relatively big place. And all the money that I had saved for school, I already gave it back to the school, so I had, no money to spend on a building. And of course I found a property that I really liked. It had a lot of potential. It had been on the market for a while. It was like one of those diamonds in the rut that, you know, you hear about, but you feel like you can never find it. But I actually found one, you know, as the market was climbing. It had been on the market for almost a year and everybody passed it up, but I saw potential in it. And so I just had to figure out how to pay for it. And it was, you know, I never thought I would be able to. And, you know, something that I'm not sure if you told me or somebody, but I think I was venting to you about it, you know, when you were in my office, since you're, you know, the real estate guru. I'm like, I found this property and I don't know how I would ever buy it. And somehow, I forget exactly how it came together, but basically I had an opportunity to get into a high interest loan, which my parents are like, are you nuts? You know, it's like 10% interest. And you mentioned, you were like, just do it. Get into the loan and then you can refinance down the road to get where you need to get, because the initial loan is so tough to get. Do whatever you need to do to get into it, and then we can fix things down the road.
Right.
And so
I remember that. I remember going to the property before you bought it.
Yes.
And looking at it with you. And, you know, the whole idea here is to take the income from your business and pay off the real estate.
Right.
That's the most successful way to make wealth, is because everybody's paying rent somewhere. And so what you're actually were doing was you grew your business all through referral, by the way, with hardly any advertising or marketing. And you take the money that you're making from your patients to pay for the real estate that you're in. And so, yes. And so what we did was, obviously, when we found the property, you know, we put together the debt and equity for you so that you could actually purchase it. And I knew that it was going to be perfect for your retreats because, you know, it's a large property in Scottsdale, and which are hard to find, as you know. And the house was a little funky, but you did some nice work in there to fix that up.
Thank you.
But the property itself lent itself for these high-end retreats. So, in fact, you already have done one, right, where people will fly in and they'll pay you a lot of money as a couple for, you know, to get their health back in order, right?
Yes.
So, you know, you don't have to give numbers, but I know for sure that, you know, just for one couple pays at least a couple months of mortgage payment, right?
Yes.
Just one couple.
Yep.
So the whole idea is once you got the property, if you could just you finance it with your clients, you know, that's how you pay for the property.
Sure.
And then we could get into, you know, the debt, the cost of the debt and the cost of the equity later, which was how you actually bought it, right?
Yes. I think, you know, I kind of keep going on these tangents because I just want to emphasize it was red tape I saw frequently. And I think that's when you're an employee and you try to, you know, make that transition, you're going to see red tape everywhere, but you just have to push through that.
Well, I remember you were like, one of the things was, you know, I don't have a job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm a self-employed, in the medical space, and they don't recognize my income because I don't have a W-2.
Right. So no one wanted to give me a mortgage.
So that was one issue, you know. And so it's not easy, but it's definitely doable. And I know, I know you've made hundreds of thousands of dollars on that property since you bought it.
Yes.
Right. Just a couple of years now.
Yep.
Right. So, you know, and now not only are your patients paying down the property in the form of, you know, because they pay you and then you pay down the loan, but you've also grown the equity a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is just in 2 short years. And what people don't realize is that the whole thing is financed by your clients.
Right.
You know? And so that's also faith. It's a bit faith.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
What I mean? Can I get people to fly in from here? And can I get, you know, what am I going to charge? And how much is that going to be? And you've already done it. It works. The model works, right?
Yes.
Not to mention your day-to-day clients. And so that's really the point of this, is that, you know, you kind of came through, you know, the smart student and, you know, got all the certifications, but your passion was to help people. And you've leveraged that now into real estate. And how's your financial health now?
Great.
After just a few years, right?
Yeah. Well, and in looking at, you brought up the quadrants. Now I have kind of moved to the right side of the quadrant because I own this real estate now that my patients are paying for, basically. And then, instead of throwing away money every day on rent, I'm not only building my business, but I'm building the real estate part of it too. And then even as I do renovations on the property, I can start using, and you're probably going to get into this, but a lot of this can be used as write-offs against my business.
Well, right. And we had Tom Wheelwright on the show, as you know, and Tom, now he gets into his magic of, the depreciation and the component depreciation and all the things that and anything and everything that you're doing now for your practice is part of your practice. It all gets written off through the practice, right?
Yeah.
Because you're doing it full time. And so people don't realize that in the world, we have producers and we have consumers.
Yes.
And you moved from being a consumer to a producer.
Yes.
That's what you did. And the tax law, everything benefits the producer. Everything.
Yes.
And the consumer is the most taxed and the most risk, in my opinion. Being a consumer is the most risky it can be. Sitting there just waiting and trying to build your war chest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now you're kind of moving your chess pieces.
Yeah.
And now you're looking at bigger and better things, as we just had this chat last week.
Yes.
Right? Say, what do I do next? And what do I do after that? And so it's fun.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. You and I were talking about, the equity in the property or, refinancing it again and all the different opportunity there is when you own real estate, all the things that we can do with it.
Yeah. And you've gotten out of that hard money loan, but that's what enabled you to buy it. So that worked really well. And you only had it for 1 year.
Yeah. And then it actually, there were tax benefits to that too. So it was so interesting to see something that looked so scary and it looked like the dumbest move I could possibly make. You were like, do it.
I know. Well, that's the whole point of this podcast is that, I think a lot of people are bumping around and they're afraid.
Yeah.
You got to plow through that fear. It's real estate for the entrepreneur. I mean, that's what this podcast is all about. And you have successfully done that. So nice job.
Thank you.
So how can people reach you at your business and also to get healthy?
Sure. So, my website is www.ultrahealthyhuman.com. And I am Dr. Nicole Srednicki. I think you can Google that. The office phone number is 480-699-4242. And I also like to recommend Dr. Radha Gopalan's book, Second Opinion, 8 Deadly Diseases. I do utilize a lot of those principles in my anti-aging practice.
Yeah, that's on Amazon. You can buy it. It's how the doctors, Dr. Radha Gopalan is unbelievable, but he talks about how to tackle health from the East and a West perspective.
Yes.
It's phenomenal book. So Nicole, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on the show, and good luck to you.
Thank you.